Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in for today. Happy to be with you. Let's get right to it. The presidential candidate, Joe Biden, who very much apparently wants to make every single person in the United States wear a mask at, I don't know, maybe all times, he spoke yesterday with Kamala Harris. Obviously, a lot of coverage of Kamala Harris over the last couple of days. She is now the running mate of one Joe Biden. And honestly, she's probably going to dominate headlines moving forward, mostly because Joe Biden is basically a no person. And I don't mean that mean. I just mean, when does he ever say anything or do anything that makes you really remember Joe Biden outside of this mask mandate sentence? But then, and my favorite part of this audio from yesterday is that he immediately turns it over to formerly mentioned Kamala Harris after saying maybe the biggest thing that he said all day. He then goes, you know what? And by the way, now let's let the person who's probably going to be the real president run these sort of things. I mean, let's be honest here. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, if they are elected, Kamala is essentially the president. I don't think that Joe Biden is going to put up much of a fight to any of the things that Kamala recommends that he do. And that's really the problem in all this. We don't have to go through all the reasons why Kamala Harris's record is confusing and why the stances she's had in the last couple years might go 100% against all the action she took while she was in a position of authority, while she was an attorney general, all the things that she could have done to help more in California or anywhere else didn't happen. But the truth is that this ticket, essentially, that's been announced is now Joe Biden puppet Kamala Harris, vice president / actual president. But here, this is an example of what I mean. Joe Biden mentions a mask mandate, a national one, without any additional pieces of information as to how exactly he'd implement that, what that would look like, if I would be arrested inside my house for not wearing a mask. All that, just left out. By the way, they didn't answer any questions from reporters, which is, something the president is criticized for whenever he does it. But when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris do it, well, that's exactly the correct thing to do. But okay, I've taken enough time. Let's actually hear this.
This is not about Democrat, Republican, or Independent. It's about saving Americans' lives. So let's institute a mask mandate nationwide, starting immediately, and we will save lives. The estimates are we'll save over 40,000 lives in the next 3 months if that is done. Now let me turn it over to my colleague and running mate. She has a few comments to make.
I love it. I love that that's the biggest statement of the day. That should be the news of the day. And then he immediately turns it over to Kamala, and all she says is, good leadership, Joe. And I don't think she meant it the way everyone took it about the mask thing. I think the way she meant it is turning it back over to her right after saying the sentence of the day.
Thanks, Joe. That's what real leadership looks like. We just witnessed real leadership.
Did we? Because now you're the one speaking. I would assume that the real leader would continue to talk about this, but no. Instead, he points to you. By the way, Hillary Clinton has now, I don't even know if I want to play this audio, but she's now thrown her hat in the ring as someone who'd love to eventually get some sort of position out of all of this. Can you see this happening? Can you see us getting to November? Joe Biden, who's still doing incredibly well in the polls, although, again, most people, and actually I love this, most people who say they'll vote for Joe say the reason why he's not Donald Trump. None of the things about him, his leadership qualities, none of the actual policies he's discussed captivate a majority of his audience. His voters only care about one thing. He's not Donald Trump. The Democrats did not have to run Joe Biden. They could have run anyone. Anyone could run for office right now and have the support of those who seem to be so vocal in any and every single poll that anyone ever fills out because, that part of this is just hatred. But Hillary Clinton has thrown her voice into do I want to play this audio? I have no idea if I want to hear from Hills. But she's first telling everybody that they should vote, of course, and then saying that she's ready to serve. I'm going to skip it for now. I might play that audio at some other point during the show, but for now, I'm not ready for it. And you know what? By the way, here's the other thing. Joe Biden, one of the other things that he said just yesterday is that he was very excited about the deal that the president also mentioned, the Israel UAE deal. This is a big peace treaty. This is a big breakthrough as far as diplomatic relations go, and nobody cares about it. I don't understand that. And Joe Biden even kind of took credit for it, by the way. He said that not only when he becomes president, which let's knock on wood, hope never happens, but when he does, he would continue to cultivate that relationship, to grow it more, even though the president has already locked this whole thing down. Let's hear him talk about this, and then I'll play you the audio from yesterday from the president that everybody's talking about. Well, there's two pieces of audio, I guess, and it's not this.
Earlier today, very exciting news, very big news all over the world. They're talking about it all over the world. It was amazing. We finalized a historic peace agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. After half a century, Israel and the United Arab Emirates will fully normalize their diplomatic relations. Nobody thought this was something that could happen for.
And nobody cares, apparently. I mean, when you have successes, when you put things up on the scoreboard as a person who's, running the country and doing a good job way more often than any kind of news organization, than most news organizations are willing to tell you he's doing, that should probably be a headline places that it's not, just to pretend that you're not actually 100% fake all the time. If you just pretend, if just every so often, like, look, do it this way. The president has to have a win once a month, maybe even to the CNNs of the world. There's got to be one that even they can say, okay, to us, this is also good. Just run it. Run that story, and then you'll look a little less like everything you do is 100% based on the agenda you have and not at all based on anything else. But the reason why I bring that up is because the actual headline, the actual big conversation from the other day is praise. It's praise for a reporter who asked the president the most idiotic question I think I've ever heard at a press conference of any kind. This is the most idiotic question that it's akin to a child asking a parent a question and the parent ignoring it, and the entire news world seems to want to praise the child in this and not the parent. Although I have seen a couple places people saying, way to go, Mr. President, for not engaging in this kind of a conversation. But this is what that sounded like.
President, after 3.5 years, do you regret at all the lying you've done to the American people?
All the what?
All the lying, all the dishonesties.
That who has done?
You have done. Tens of thousands.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the payroll tax.
I love the guy who wants to ask about payroll tax after, because he got blindsided by every part of that. The reporter after is like, I don't know what's happening now, but I'd like to ask about the payroll tax. I'd like to get back on topic, any topic other than someone just grandstanding. And this is the kind of thing you expect from a CNN. And I don't remember what reporter actually asked this question, but I don't think it was CNN. Maybe it was. But I just love the next guy.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the payroll tax.
I think. I'm not sure. Should I ask you if you've lied to us a bunch or not? If you praise someone for that question at that moment during a press conference, multiple press conferences about things going on in the world, what do you expect the answer to be? In all honesty, if you're a reporter, if you're that guy, you woke up that morning, you're like, hey, what am I going to do? I'm going to cover a press conference today from the president. All right, let me plan some questions. And the only one you get on the paper, the only one you come up with is, let me ask him about all the lies he's told over the last 3.5 years and if he's sad about those lies. I mean, is that even really, he's not using any part of the value of being in that room. He just wants to make Twitter news. He just wants to be celebrated for a person who's not afraid of the evil human that is President Donald Trump, because that's Trump derangement syndrome right there if I've ever seen it. And I'm not pretending that there's not a bunch of things that the president does that I don't agree with, that people don't agree with. There's a lot of things that he does. There's a lot of wins, too, though, that he has, as I mentioned a second ago, that almost no one in the news world seems to care about. And I assume the American people care quite a bit more. And I assume when, yet again, all the polls say one thing, but in November something else might happen, it'll be because the news media so often underestimates the value of the good things that people do, the good things that President Trump does, and how much they mean. It's just, all of this is just crazy. But the fact that this reporter is getting praised for being courageous, for fighting the power, this isn't even a version of that. It's a very simple, very poorly worded question that had no chance of gaining any sort of response. And the other thing that I've seen covered some places is Trump was speechless, that he was so shocked by the question and its value. And no, he moved on. He moved on again the way an adult does when a child looks at them and says something that's just not a thing, just not a question that you have any need to answer, or not a request that you're going to fulfill. You just move to the next person. That was the most presidential thing I've seen him do in a little while. I know there was a question earlier, one about Kamala Harris and an attorney, and that one's getting a lot of coverage too. Although I would say, and maybe I'll play that audio as well in a bit, although I do have to take a break in just a second, that I think the president is being unfairly treated in the way in which people are pretending he was what he was trying to say. I think very often a lot of people recap the president wrong on purpose, and I think that's happening with the Kamala Harris question. So maybe we'll get to that in a little bit. I don't know, but it's a heck of a day, and I will not at any point in this show praise a reporter who asks, do you regret the 3.5 years of lying, sir? And then I'm going to check out. I'm done for the day. I mean, that's not doing your job, my friend. All right, a quick break, a lot more. Chad Benson Show, Craig Collins filling in.
I, you, he, she, it. Lucy is a girl.
Point of personal privilege, please do not use gendered language to address everyone.
Shut up, boo. Ain't nobody got time for this.
This is the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. I'm filling in for today. Lots of political things to chat about throughout the day, but also, unfortunately, lots of things to talk about in the world of protesting and or whatever this is. I don't know what this is, actually, because I'm not really sure that it qualifies as peaceful protesting. But you might have seen this headline. There was a group of Black Lives Matter individuals who went through downtown Seattle and actually on a megaphone yelled at the homeowners that live in the neighborhood. The big thing they yelled, apparently, is that the gentrification of that area was unfair and that the people who now live in those homes need to give them to the protesters and need to give them their money as well, by the way. I think one of the people yelled into the megaphone, or maybe not even into a megaphone, because a couple people were just screaming as one individual stood there while they're marching. And they're stopped. These are just houses. These are just people's houses. They don't really have any actual knowledge as to who was living in each individual home. They just know that the neighborhood has changed to be a white neighborhood now. So they walk through the area, they yell things at the windows of individuals, and if anybody engages them, they just go even crazier, yelling, screaming, and saying things like, you need to give us your... And I would play some of this audio, but one, there's a lot of F-bombs and things dropped in there that I don't think anybody would be too happy if I played on the radio. And two, this is not peaceful protesting. I mean, I know that they didn't actually throw a Molotov cocktail at one of these houses, but you're essentially demanding that someone leave their house, and you're saying that's because it's somehow their fault. I mean, look, and I'm not trying to be extreme in my take here, but this sounds like hate. It does when this sort of thing happens. You gotta be willing to acknowledge it. And I'm a little scared as I mention all that because, you know, on the off chance that someone somehow concocts a different version of the words I'm saying right now into I'm a huge, horrible person for any one of a number of reasons, then, you know, the Twitter mob will have got me too. But in all honesty, if you went through a neighborhood, just you, whoever you are, I don't care what race you are, I don't care what gender you are, I don't care anything about it, and on a megaphone with a crowd of people, you started demanding that people leave their homes and give you their money, do you think that anyone would feel like you were being peaceful? Do you think they went, that's fine, that was right? But the movement, and by the way, I want to say this, because I want to keep saying this as much as I can when I talk about Black Lives Matter, the sentiment itself is not a bad thing. The concept that lives matter, that specifically Black Lives Matter, and that at times they are being undervalued is in of itself, just as an idea, completely fine. It's the organization, it's the group that runs the Black Lives Matter movement, and the things that they say way beyond that simple concept, that simple sentence, that goes so very far the other way. Another good example is out of Chicago. They had more looting, they had more rioting, they had more things that, again, are very far from peaceful protesting, happen over the weekend. And then in a couple different interviews, the leader of the Black Lives Movement in Chicago said that was all okay. that she supports all of the things that happened over the weekend, all the businesses that were broken into and robbed, because one, she said those businesses weren't there for her, that they weren't out there for her, so they deserve to be looted. And then two, that it was akin to reparations, the money that was being given or the money that was being earned via, I guess, I don't know, however the things that are stolen wind up turning into money. I guess however they're sold, however that's eventually conducted. And there were, just remember this, there were U-Hauls being used. There was a coordinated effort to take as many things as possible from businesses in downtown Chicago utilizing U-Hauls. And then the person responsible for leading the movement there says this is an okay version of civil, reform trying to be attempted because peace doesn't work. To say peace doesn't work, to say that you're going to continue to do things that are violent, things that are crimes, things that the politicians in Chicago have finally completely gone after. Mayor Lori Lightfoot there has finally said that she is going to prosecute and find all of the individuals who committed crimes and that there's no justification for it. But the leader of the Black Lives Matter movement disagrees, thinks it's totally fine. I don't understand how we can't cover these things the way that they're actually happening and to be fair about all the situations, to be 100% fair about the concept being valuable, but the execution right now, all the things happening in the world being very far from what people, I think a lot of people, most people who show up to peacefully protest would feel is the appropriate way to have a message heard. This is not the right way to demand people leave their houses and give you their money in downtown Seattle and then to praise those who break into any kind of business in downtown Chicago because, again, those businesses are somehow the enemy. I don't understand the way in which this is all happening and just the concept that the enemy is anybody and everybody at some point. I don't know if that's the right messaging that'll move this movement any more forward. And it just seems at times dangerous and or scary. But yeah, that's the world we live in right now, right? That's the way in which this works. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Let's shift gears to the very calm, very easy world of college football. I am kidding, of course, because college football is as a mess as anything else in 2020, and we should have expected no different. At this point, the start of anything, any planned thing that's supposed to happen, I assume, will get tremendously messy moving forward. 3 of the Power 5 conferences interested in playing fall football. 2 of them not interested in playing. They'll be playing in the spring, I assume, or maybe not. The NCAA also has kind of put their position out there in the world, and their position is not aligned with the ACC, the Big 12, or the SEC. It's more about not playing football the way that the Big 10 or the Pac-12 seem to be feeling. The NCAA medical advisors have put out via social media, and I think even a press conference, that they feel like this is a quote from one of their infectious disease experts. And it's weird, too, that all the different conferences and then the NCAA as just an organization have their own experts. Couldn't we pick one expert for everybody? Would it be easier if maybe we had it doesn't have to be one person. It can be a team, but like one team of experts giving their advice to all 5 power conferences and then the NCAA as an organization, that'd probably be more beneficial. But quoting the medical advisors for the NCAA and Dr. Carlos Del Rio, actually, he says, I feel like we have hit the iceberg and we're making decisions about when we should have the band play, meaning that, I guess, in no uncertain terms, he thinks there shouldn't be football in the fall. Several big power conferences disagree. The ACC, the Big 12, the SEC, that includes Notre Dame, who is an independent but will play in the ACC. And look, let's be very honest about the ramifications on either side of this conversation. Are the players risking their health in a way by choosing to play football? Yeah. But actually, a few different players have made it pretty clear online that not only do they want to play football and they're willing to take that risk, but there are some arguments to be made that the amount of focus on their health that would take place while they're playing might actually keep them safer. And I know that that's probably a hard pill for some to swallow, a hard concept to truly figure out. But if you're getting tested more often, if you're being encouraged to stay as safe as you possibly can on a daily basis because you want to suit up every Saturday and play football and be ready to go to the NFL, if that call is made then, during draft time, I think that there is some value in the idea that maybe this would keep a lot of players safer. But would people potentially get ill? Yes, sadly they would. Would college students be just as much at risk in their daily lives of getting ill? Yeah, I think so. So I don't know that by them not playing, you're actually completely preventing any sort of transmission of COVID-19, just to be honest. And then the other portion of all this, and something that I've actually come to change my mind on a bit, because I always thought that in the professional leagues, if pros say they want to play, they're making a lot of money to play those sports. So if they're willing to risk their safety and however serious that risk is, if they're willing to do it, that's on them. And they're getting paid for that risk. So that's okay. College football players, of course, not paid. Maybe they should be. That's controversial in a different way. I don't think I should go there. But I wondered if maybe it was better for the players to not necessarily be put in the situation to have to decide if they're willing to play or not, to be, maybe treated a certain way by the team if they want to opt out of a season because they're not making any money. But it seems that these young people, 18 to 22-year-olds for the most part, just want to suit up and try to play a sport they love at a time that it's important to do the things that make you feel happy. And so come on. I mean, the NCAA and the organizations that are pushing against this, you're treating these individuals like they're not adults. And yet 18 is old enough to sign up for the draft, to sign up for the Army, to be drafted. It is old enough to fight for our country. It's not old enough to choose to play a sport because you want to play it, even during a time when there is a pandemic that still isn't fully understood. And I will keep saying that too till I'm blue in the face, is we don't totally understand COVID-19 still. We think we get a better grasp on it all the time, but it'll be years from now till we have all the studies, all the antibody information we need to know just how prevalent it was, just how serious the illness was. I know that people have lost their lives, and I know that number is very high, but even those pieces of information may change as we move forward and understand more of what exactly was going on, which we don't fully grasp right now. That is just the world in which we live. All right, let's shift gears again. I like this story a lot because I imagine that I'm talking to some people who've done this. 41% of people during lockdowns had conversations with a pet. 41%. And this is not a how are you doing kind of thing. This was an interaction. Taking care of them while giving a schedule to help them get through the day was the number 5 answer to the things you did as a pet owner during the time of pandemic. It gives you someone to talk to was the number 4 benefit to having a pet in the house, to the way in which you interacted with them. And that is probably great. I don't have any. Maybe the reason that I smile as I say that one is I don't have a pet to talk to. Maybe I'm just jealous. Maybe I'm just a hater right now who feels very sad that when I had a quarantine that my wife had to deal with me talking to her. And eventually I think she needed me to have a pet. Maybe after I tell her this story, she'll run out and get a dog just to make herself a little more free from the daily conversations that come her way. But number 3 is playing and going on walks had forced someone to stay active, stay exercising. That's another thing that was a benefit to having a pet during quarantine. It helped with anxiety, and it helped you feel less lonely. Those all make sense. The conversation one, I wonder if they actually started to feel, the 41% of people who did this, like it was a two-sided conversation. Because maybe it was. Maybe there were interactions or things that got better. Maybe people became more like dog whisperers during that time. I'm not really sure, but it could be possible. The connection could get better. I know that that's a thing. I assume that that's a thing. I feel like I should just move on from this topic now because I don't know where else I'm going with this. A drunk guy running from the cops mistakes an unmarked police car for a taxi, and this makes me happy on an abundant amount of levels. He's a 19-year-old guy. He's in Canada, and he's on the run. He wants to get away from the cops because he's intoxicated. He should not be doing the things he's doing, and so he hops into what he thinks is a taxi and he says, take me to 17th Street, bro. And there's cops behind him. I don't know if this guy just assumed that he all of a sudden was in a movie, because if you're a taxi driver, if you're not a police officer in a cop car, but you're a taxi driver, you still don't drive away with this dude. You don't say, oh, cool, this $10 fare you're going to give me is worth me going on the run from the cops with you, random human I just met 2 seconds ago. So flawed plan in general, my friend. But the fact that you took it a step further and jumped into an unmarked cop car is just fantastic. They just probably locked the doors and they're like, man, this isn't going to be your day. And he's like, no, it's not. 2020 is rough on everybody. Even 19-year-old kids running from the cops while intoxicated in Canada, they're not going to do well this year. All right, this is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. Going to take a quick break. A lot more in just a bit.
Set Chad straight. Text the show 323-538-2423. That's 323-538-CHAD. Someone has to do it. Might as well be you. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in for today. The people who run the Herman Cain Twitter account scared a lot of individuals, or at least confused a lot of individuals by tweeting something out recently. And I guess as I dove more into this coverage, there was a website or something somewhere where the family of Herman Cain said that they'd continue to utilize his Twitter platform after he sadly passed away recently, just because they want to engage with those who follow him. I don't know that that's the right approach. I got to be honest. I don't know if moving forward here, and you do what you want. Everybody, you teach their own. Because a lot of people reacted when Herman Cain tweeted out a reaction to the Kamala Harris name being dropped. Joe Biden saying that his running mate was Kamala Harris. The Twitter account reacted, and a lot of people are like, wait a minute, this is the scariest thing now of 2020. Herman Cain still tweeting. And of course, it's his family who's now changed the name to the Cain Gang on social media so people know. But there's a creepiness here in general too. I don't want any of my social media pages to still be around if I'm not here. That's not something I want to leave on I don't know. When Facebook was invented years ago and Twitter became a thing, I don't think any of us ever envisioned a world in which we'd all have to decide what would happen to these pages when we sadly wouldn't be here anymore. But especially in the world of politicians, the world of public people, I don't think that it terribly makes sense to keep using that platform, especially if the person used it all on their own the entire time they had it to communicate. But I don't know. I guess it's fine. Totally no big deal there. But it scared a lot of people, and there needed to be a better explanation. And maybe, I guess, if you are going to do this, at least put a few disclaimers out there actually on Twitter and not on a website somewhere else, saying that, of course, your value here is to keep using this platform, but that you are, I don't know. I don't know what the right, let's just move on. I also saw this. It's in the news. It's going to be in the news a lot. AG Barr was talking about, and I believe this was on Fox News, about the investigation going on right now into FBI conduct. It's a good thing to a lot of people that the FBI is being investigated for what probably was a significant bias against President Trump during their investigation into Russia, during their investigation into a lot of things, the handling of the Steele dossier. So let's hear a little bit from AG William Barr about what will happen and what maybe has already happened that we'll be hearing about today.
We need to get the story of what happened in 2016 and 17 now out. That will be done. The second aspect of this is if people cross the line, if people involved in that activity violated the criminal law, they will be charged. And John Durham is an independent man, highly experienced, and his investigation is pursuing apace. There was some delay because of COVID, but I'm satisfied with the progress. And I've said there are going to be developments, significant developments before the election, but we're not doing this on the election schedule. We're aware of the election. We're not going to do anything inappropriate.
That's great. I think a lot of the things you just said are great. And also, Durham is investigating some people that now work at Twitter who were part of the FBI. That's a weird place to wind up working, by the way, Twitter, a place that has definitely gone after the president, I feel, attempting to silence a lot of the things he says, while also holding the office that's most valuable in our entire country. You want to have that account be silenced because you disagree or feel that some of the things being said are dangerous or what have you. And now some of those individuals who might have investigated Trump years ago via the FBI work at that place. That's a little bit odd. That's a little bit strange. So this should be welcomed by everybody. The fact that it's going on, it's an investigation. And any information that comes to light will be made available. However, unlike maybe any other time where things are attempted in a way to help or hurt during an election, this will be done with the investigation very aware that an election is taking place and that is a valuable thing for the American people to focus on while still giving them the vital information they need from investigations like this and not necessarily changing or trying to persuade via any sort of information that comes out. So this should be universally praised as well. Of course, it's not. Of course, it's thought of as a witch hunt. And of course, it's, William Barr being an agent of Donald Trump yet again, which is just something. I don't know. That doesn't, to me, sound like an agent. Oh, and by the way, this is also something I like. I don't know if you could just give anything that happens, if you could just give some sort of responsibility to Donald Trump, to his administration, to somebody involved, because the Kanye West presidential run is now, a lot of people are saying that this is purposeful, that Jared Kushner set all this up because he wants to take away Joe Biden's support and that Kanye West is valuable to do that. Kanye has even added flames to that fire by sort of insinuating it's true, although he has now, I think, come out and said that Jared Kushner is afraid of his independent run for president. I think Kanye West even said, I quote, he knows that I can win because the meeting between the two of them, I guess they're friends, has been covered quite a bit in the news recently. And look, I don't talk as much about Kanye as maybe I should or maybe I thought I would, because if he is having a mental episode, if he is dealing with mental illness, that's not fun to joke about the world in which he's putting himself in right now. If he really just needs treatment, if he just really needs help. But at the same time, I mean, running for president and the things that are being said, it makes it hard to completely ignore that. And now the conspiracy theory thing, the agent of Trump's administration and trying to pull away. Kanye West was a longtime supporter of the president, going on TV several times, having a meeting at the White House, talking about his support. I'm not sure that if this plan was concocted by Republicans, that it would actually benefit anyone as much as some people are pretending it would. And by the way, I do like this story, and I don't even think this is necessarily Kanye's fault, so I think it's completely fair game. The Mickey Mouse thing. I don't know if anybody's heard about this, but Mickey Mouse signed a petition to get Kanye West on a ballot, and people are very upset about that. A lot of lawyers are saying there's no way that Mickey Mouse is one of the signatures on this. But I will remind everybody that Tupac Shakur, I think he got unemployment insurance in Kentucky a while back, and this went viral because everyone thought that that's obviously an abuse of the system. And then somebody stepped forward who was named Tupac Shakur and was like, no, I'm a human. I'm an actual person, and I do need unemployment right now. There is a chance, however small, that someone is named Mickey Mouse. I just want to say that. I'm not necessarily supporting the Kanye West presidential run here or anything, but I'm saying that we have all kinds of crazy names for children these days. There is a parent that might be, I would say mean, but crazy enough to name their child Mickey Mouse. And maybe they're a whole family with the last name Mouse, and already this just seemed like it would work. So that's a warning out there to the world, to everyone who's judging the idea that someone named Mickey Mouse signed a Kanye West petition and that just can't possibly happen. Don't forget Tupac Shakur. I love that as a sentence in so many ways, but it's true. Don't forget him. Don't forget the guy in Kentucky, a white guy named Tupac Shakur, who wound up having to struggle very difficultly to get his unemployment benefits because, well, he should probably consider changing his name. And if Mickey Mouse is a real person, I think that they should also probably consider the name change. But I think Kanye is probably very happy to get their support, to have them in their corner at a time like this right now, because it's just something. All right, there's one other thing I wanted to cover real quickly here. Manhattan, along with a lot of other places, struggling to fill their apartments. Manhattan has, I think, the most empty apartments that it's had on record in a long time. And the way that they're now trying to fill them is a little strange. There is a viral listing for an apartment in New York that's being called a sexy apartment. That's right. And it's not the normal way. This sounds a little bit too crazy, the listing. It's a $2,500 per month apartment. The listing says it's a hide-and-seek adult-style apartment. It has a sexy king-sized one-bedroom where you'll find 4 very large closets in which you can hide any kind of things you want to. It also should be lucky enough to be found. The 2 of you can retreat to the king-size bedroom where you can play. There's a lot of different listings throughout the entire thing here. I don't know if this is a solution to the problem of having a lot of apartments that are unrented to go this road. I would tell you that if you were to rent this apartment, you'd probably want a professional cleaning crew in there to do probably a full remodel. I've got to be honest. If you went down the road of this place, you might want to demand that they just remove everything in it. Maybe even add a little bit of a fire to the equation, burn some things before you move in. But this is probably not going to solve the issue of having a place that is difficult to rent by just spinning into how sexy the apartment and the area might be. A lot of people reacted on social media by being very confused as to why a person would put this out there. Maybe it's just the intent to go viral, right? If all else fails in 2020, the way that you succeed is you just go viral somehow, and then maybe good things happen. But yeah, go look up that listing. Go check it out. Maybe I'll put it up on some social media pages for you, because you're going to get very uncomfortable very fast, much like I was while just talking about this story at all. Because, yeah, this is a desperate shot at trying to make sure that an apartment has a tenant in it, and I think it's a bad move. All right, Craig Collins filling in. This is the Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in for today. Happy to be with you. Chad will be back on Monday. A lot going on in the world, a lot going on in the world of social media, in the world of the internet. And I have a few of those stories in just a second. But let's kick off the conversation with the biggest news, at least over the last 24 hours. That would be things the president has said, which I could just probably start every show like that. These are things the president has said that everyone on earth has a reaction to, or most people do. One of the bigger things that was stated just yesterday at a press conference involved lying. A reporter asked the president if he felt that all of the lies he's told after the last 3.5 years are things that he regrets. And what's crazy about this story to me is the amount of now universal praise being thrown the reporter's way. But here, just for your own sake, let's hear this conversation. Let's hear this question, and the president ignoring it, which is something that a lot of people, I think, would do in a question that's as ridiculously biased, loaded, and just utterly, I think, a grandstanding moment that had no intention of having an actual answer to this. But here's what that sounds like.
President, after 3.5 years, do you regret it all the lying you've done to the American people?
All the what?
All the lying, all the dishonesties.
That who has done?
You have done. Tens of thousands.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the payroll tax.
I'm still amused by the guy that goes next and is very confused at what's going on. But this is being praised. This is being celebrated by so many places, by news organizations. There's so many hot takes on the internet, as I said, so many social media posts about how this reporter is brave. That's not bravery. That's not getting to the heart of the story. There is no, version of really great insider journalism taking place that gets someone an answer or truth that they can then share with the American people. This is being a jerk in a public place, and being a jerk in a way that has no intention of actually gaining any sort of story. I don't know what the reporter wrote, actually, in response to the answer that was not given to this question, but I saw a couple places say that he was, that the president was silenced and had nothing to say after this question because, I don't know, so many news organizations seem to think that this might be valid and verifiable and whatever sort of information. This is not the way to get to that. If you feel like the president has told lie after lie after lie, investigate all of them, write a report about that. You don't have to ask him. You don't have to ask him to his face if he regrets the 3.5 years of quote unquote lying without any sort of information. All right. I also saw in the NFL, just shifting gears a lot here, to a story that I think we might see a lot more of. Although I wonder if just because it was a rookie and a guy that went undrafted, that maybe that's the reason he's no longer a part of the football team. But a Seattle Seahawks rookie, his name is Kima Siverand. I think I'm probably saying that wrong, by the way. I apologize to Kima. But he tried to sneak a woman into his hotel. And this would be the team hotel while they're playing or while they're participating in whatever camp they're doing right now. And he got in a lot of trouble for that because, that's not even someone he knows very well, if I'm understanding the story correctly. But let's all take a second and say that in most years, not the 2020, not the year of the quarantine, the year of the pandemic, that if you're a brand new professional athlete, you probably want to date. That's what I'll call it. I'll just call it dating. You want to date a little bit. You'd like to, meet some people. If you're a single person, if you're a young person, and if you're now a famous athlete, you probably, this is just a risk we all had going into the season, in my opinion. The off chance that most of the single guys that play professional sports would have interest in women during the time in which they're playing professional sports. I'm not saying that it was wrong to cut the guy. I mean, yes, during a time like now, it's going to be difficult to have any of that sort of thing happen. And I guess athletes who play sports are going to have to all, take a vows of celibacy for quite a while if you don't wind up having a family. I think in the NBA, they're going to start allowing family members to be part of their bubble, which has worked incredibly well. The NBA has had a lot of things that I think people could say, react to a lot. They've had a lot of social media, a lot of stances happen at their games. There's been a lot of discussions of the issues that exist in the world, and then there's also playing of sports in the NBA. But the bubble itself has worked tremendously. That's been a runaway success when you compare it to the MLB. And so I assume that all sports will try to mimic it as much as possible, which means for single, young, athletic guys who just got into this league like this guy, that it's going to be a very difficult year as far as your dating profile goes, as far as the Tinder world that you try to live in for a bit there. That's not going to work out as well. And that's going to be difficult. There's going to be a challenge, I imagine, to that. So is this story shocking? No. Does this player deserve another shot with another team? Yeah, I think he definitely does. And also, I think that he might not be the only player in any league that winds up at some point maybe trying to go on again. This is the way I want to say it. This is the best way to keep saying it. Try to go on a date, because I think that that's going to be a big part of our. It's just honestly, okay, you know what? All right, I don't have to explain that anymore. I think I've done enough there. Do you know that a whole lot of states are buying some stuff a lot more in bulk than they ever did before? Each state has this sort of, I guess, favorite option, this favorite choice of things they want to buy. And this is a recent survey of just the things that we've been going out and grabbing. And it's weird. Some of them are a little strange, especially Indiana, where apparently people have been disproportionately looking for human blood. And I don't know why. I don't even want to explain that one, but that's real. In Georgia, people are looking for swords. In Delaware, chloroform is something that's being disproportionately purchased at this time. That's pretty scary. In Hawaii, it's Spam, which is a terrible food product. There's no one out there that really likes Spam. Actually, okay, there probably are. And I'm now going to get social media hate for Chad on this. So this is Craig Collins filling in, the Craig Collins Show on Facebook if you want to complain. But Spam, that's not a good product. There's nothing redeeming. Unless they're a sponsor, then it's delicious. Nevada is importing huge amounts of tequila right now, which that's the first one that makes any sense to me at all as far as the ones that I've thrown out there. The sword one is very scary in Georgia. Tennessee is buying typewriters. I don't know if that's just giving up. That's just assuming that the world is going to be very difficult for the time being and moving forward. All kinds of technology might be gone. So let's get our hands on as many typewriters as possible. But there's been a surge in some unique products. And actually, I've really enjoyed that coverage during the time of the pandemic, like the things we've turned to purchase and the things that we have not purchased, just in, I guess, not a specific state's way, and certainly not as odd as those, but things like a kiddie pool. A lot of people are now buying those because they're not going to go to the beach. So it's a very sad version of going out into your backyard and feeling like you're at the beach. You're going to buy a kiddie pool. Pants are something that people did not buy a lot of for a while because, well, we were all working from home. Shirts were more popular. Pants, not so much. Even a bra is something that really fell in popularity over the months in which you didn't have to go outside of your home. So it's interesting to see a lot of the things that are being purchased just, I guess, by everybody. But certainly there's a few states that I now probably don't want to go to anytime in the near future. Indiana would definitely be one where I didn't even know you could get your hands on human blood. And certainly another one in Georgia. I'm just not ready for that. Or even Delaware, I guess, with the chloroform thing. That's not probably a good way to go. All right. I've resisted it as much as I could for as long as I could. I am going to play a little bit of this. This is us hearing from Hillary Clinton, who's throwing her name back into the ring as someone just shifting gears back to politics, who would love to get some sort of opportunity. And I think people for a long time were curious if the Joe Biden run was just sort of a ploy and that eventually Hills would step to the forefront here. Although now I think Kamala Harris is the one assumed. I think she thinks that she's probably going to at some point get to run the show, if not right away, with Biden just standing there and kind of, listening to whatever she says. But here's Hillary Clinton on her reaction, telling people to vote. By the way, what I think is really interesting about this audio is she's insinuating that there could be some fraud in voting in person, which is just, the president keeps talking about the potential for fraud when voting by mail, but not a lot of people are saying that there could be a lot of fraud when voting in person. Hillary makes sure to point out at the tail end of this audio that you should be very careful and take even a photo of the vote that you cast while in the booth. I can't wait for that to be an argument on the left that voting in person actually causes fraud. But here we go. No, wait, you know what? Hold on. I hit a button wrong. This is the Chad Benson Show, and it's my fault. Craig Collins pushing a button wrong, but here we go. Let's try this again. Now, Hillary, take it away. It's still no. All right, here we go.
It's an idea that is promoted by people who don't want your vote to count. So I think that you need to really understand that you are registered. Make sure, go online, make it absolutely clear that you are registered and there's no problems with your registration. Number two, decide whether you can go and vote. And if your state or your county has early voting, if you don't want to go on election day, then go early and make sure.
I don't know what's happening. There's a deep dive into all the things you should do, all the ways in which you should go vote. But go ahead. Keep going, Hillary.
Sure, you stay there until your vote is counted. Take a picture of your vote. Take your phone with you.
What now? You got to do what? If you go in person and Hillary Clinton feels that you could be sabotaged, all the changes could be made to your ballot, you got to take a photo with it on your phone, because that'll totally make sense. If you walk up to a judge after placing your vote and accusing them of changing it and then showing them a photo on your phone of your vote, that's really going to help a lot.
Into either the little booth or the stand where you're voting, take a picture of your vote so you have a record that you voted and how you voted. Make sure you watch if you're putting your vote into a machine where it's supposed to be tallied.
Make sure. Everything you do, make sure. It would be awesome if the position of the left to counteract the president's position that in mail-in voting is potentially fraudulent, is potentially a system that could be abused if it's used by a majority of our country. It would be awesome if the left's counter to that is that in-person voting is more flawed. Because then I don't even know. Then we all give up. I guess we all just put a Facebook status up and that's how we vote. Because that's safe. That's probably the safest way to do it. Hillary Clinton diving deep into how you protect yourself from fraud while voting in person at a voting place. And yeah, I've got no other words other than the fact that she also said, and I'm not even going to get to the audio now, I just give up on it, that she can't wait if she's offered some kind of position to help however she can. I am sure she can. All right, this is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
Check out our Chad Benson Show Facebook page where you can hang out or hang your grievances out to dry. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. There is a big story developing involving Yale University. The Justice Department announced after an investigation that it found that Yale University was illegally discriminating against people during an admissions process. Which people, you ask? Well, Asian Americans and white applicants. This is in violation of federal civil rights laws, officials said just recently. Yale denied the allegations, calling it meritless and hasty in their reaction. But the DOJ said that Yale uses race at multiple points in its admissions process. Yale uses race when it initially rates applicants, when it again rates those previously rated applicants, and again when it considers applicants at subsequent stages of the admissions process. Yale discriminates based, this is all according to the DOJ, discriminates based on race among comparable applicants to whom Yale's own admission staff gave identical ratings earlier in the process. Yale use of race at multiple steps of the admissions process results in a multiplied effect of race on an applicant's likelihood of admission. Yale's race discrimination contrasts starkly with the program upheld in which the University of Texas considers race as a sub-factor of its multi-factor assessment of applicants. This is obviously just comparing it to, I guess, someone who's doing it much better. Yale's admissions data and other information also show that the university is using race as more than just plus factors, but rather as a predominant criteria that in practice and determinative qualities in many admissions decisions. This is something else. And it's honestly something that I think in a way may not be terribly shocking news to a lot of people. A lot of people might feel that, yeah, there's always been kind of a thought that maybe, and I don't know, maybe it's just the amount of applicants that come in of any one specific race. I guess this would be Asian Americans or white applicants for Yale, that maybe that's how this happens. But this is racism. And you see a take every so often out there in the world that says that racism can't be applied to the majority. It's only minorities who can feel the effects of that. Well, I got to be honest, any college kid that applied or any high school kid that applied to go to Yale that didn't get in, and the reason why is because the race they are, and I don't care what race it is, I think that that's a pretty simple 1-2 step as far as the logic process goes to say that, okay, that the reason I didn't get into school there is because I'm white or because I'm an Asian American, and then that doesn't really sound fair to me. It sounds actually unlawful, according to the DOJ. Unlawfully dividing Americans into racial or ethnic blocks fosters stereotypes, bitterness, and division. That was part of their statement. It is past time for American institutions to recognize that all people should be treated with decency and respect and without unlawful regard to the color of their skin. That is yet another statement being made in reaction to the Yale investigation. And the fact that the university is denying it right now means what? I don't know if they'll wind up having to provide any sort of information, any sort of proof that this is not happening to the amount that it apparently is happening. I don't think I've seen any actual proof other than just saying that this is meritless. But it is very confusing to be in a time right now, the time we're in, where so many conversations are coming to the forefront. And a conversation like this, if it does get widely ignored, if this is not the thing you hear a lot about, I don't know what that indicates. I guess I'll leave that up to you to figure out exactly what that indicates. But this shouldn't be happening. I think that's as easy as a way to say it as I possibly can, is just like anything else in the world in which any group of individuals based on race, sex, anything that they should not be judged on, they get judged. And honestly, and I barely have any time to talk about this, it does lead me kind of into this back and forth conversation about the things being said of the vice presidential pick about Joe Biden picking Kamala Harris, and then the ways in which some people are being attacked for being sexist, for being racist, based on the things they're saying as criticisms of the person who's been selected as the VP. There's a lot of confusing elements to just any of that going on right now, because at times it feels that all of the policing, all of the concepts that this is racist and this isn't racist deal more with, or sexist or not sexist, deal more with who it is that's the target of criticism or who it is that's being negatively impacted. If it's someone that right now the world of the social media world or whoever cares about, then those things are all going to be brought up constantly. You're going to hear about it on the news all the time, and people like the president are going to be accused of being racist. If it's not those individuals, then you might not hear about the story at all. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. More in a bit.
Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, and I am currently alone, so I am mask-free. I'm not sure if I'm going to break a potential mandate that former Vice President Joe Biden would like to put into place if he became the president. But that is one of many things being praised about his appearance yesterday. There is almost a daily now event of people call it Biden-Harris. I'm tempted to call them Harris-Biden events because I really do think that now that we've selected the VP and that it's Kamala Harris, who certainly is a strong and outspoken human, among other things, that there's a chance she may start to persuade Joe to do a lot of things, or maybe just straight up tell Joe to do some stuff. And he might just wind up listening, because Joe Biden, even during his press conference, stepped aside after saying the mask thing for Kamala so that she could keep speaking. And I know he just announced that she will be his vice presidential candidate. So maybe that's why, maybe not. I don't know. I feel like Joe Biden is the least exciting politician we've seen in a long time. He is the most bland of humans. So there's nothing he really does to captivate or really inspire, in my opinion, anybody. And so maybe that's where this is all coming from. But let's hear a little bit of that press conference and that mention of a national mask mandate, which, by the way, no details, no information is given about. I don't even know what it means. And then, as I said, a few minutes after, about a minute and a half after mentioning it, he gives the floor to his vice presidential candidate. But here it goes.
Look, this America. Be a patriot. Protect your fellow citizens. Protect your fellow citizens. Step up. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. There's overwhelming evidence that the mask, and depending on the type of mask you wear, increases exponentially.
What word was that? Increases what? Exponentially? It increases exponentially. I don't know, our safety. But let's let Joe continue, although I'm going to need a judge's ruling on what exactly that word is and what it means.
This is not about Democrat, Republican, or Independent. It's about saving Americans' lives. So let's institute a mask mandate nationwide, starting immediately, and we will save lives. The estimates are we'll save over 40,000 lives in the next 3 months if that is done. Now let me turn it over to my colleague and running mate. She has a few comments.
I don't know. I'll keep getting entertained by that. I might be the only one. Now, this is the strongest take I'm going to have of the day, and you guys might have questions about it. Let me immediately get away from the microphone and then not speak again at all. Let me do as little as I can to be challenged and eventually put my foot in my mouth, because I am Joe Biden, and I am kind of running for president. I've now picked Kamala Harris, who's a better debater than I am for sure. I mean, honestly, that team right now, I think that they wish it was like medieval times and you could choose your champion for the debate coming up, and that Biden could choose Kamala to debate instead. I think Trump would still enjoy himself having a debate with Kamala Harris, but it'd be very different than debating Joe Biden and his exponentially, or whatever the word it was he chose to say there, take on the mask wearing situation. But let's be serious for a second, actually, about a potential national federal mandate to wear masks. And I absolutely think that people should wear them. I do. I think that that's something that I personally do, that a lot of people do. And if you think that it's protective at all, I think you should probably lean to the side of doing it. But could we handle arrests happening or huge fines happening because people chose not to wear a mask because they feel that they have the right to choose what to do with, the clothing they wear or what they put around their face, and that they feel that in some ways this could actually be going after some freedoms that our country is very proud to have? Do we want to put those people in jail? Do we want to put those people in positions where, they're paying huge fines at a time when finances are not exactly great for so many Americans? No, that is absolutely not a world we want to go down. And this does, I guess, in some ways kind of connect to Kamala Harris. And this is a criticism of her. And it's just a criticism of her record in general, I guess. But she put in very strong truancy rules when she was a attorney general in California that really wound up harming a lot of people, essentially making it a pretty big deal to skip school. And though heart being in the right place, I guess, there by encouraging kids to get a high school education, making it something that the legal system would be fairly involved in, probably felt like an overstep to parents and to a lot of individuals. It's something she's criticized a lot for now because it hurt a lot of people who are in positions that now feel maybe that supporting Kamala would help individuals in certain situations, maybe have things improve. This certainly didn't improve for people that were in, areas that were low income or what have you. So now, if you have a person like that in a position of power and you have a mask mandate that has a federal accountability system in place, that sounds to me like a very interesting and difficult road to be in, where Kamala Harris is then somehow involved, if she were, in the legal process, or at least encouraging the legal process to be as strong as possible. And that's absolutely what people are talking about when choosing not to wear a mask. That's absolutely the statement that is trying to be made. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. I don't really want to get into that. Should you wear a mask? I think you should. But at the same time, I do not want to see anyone go to jail. And yet this is also being praised, by the way. Kamala steps up to the platform a second later and says that that's true leadership. And then she gets to keep talking about it. And they don't answer any questions from reporters, which I found tremendously interesting. Something that you would constantly hear the president be attacked for. And yet, that's also a good move by them. Because the thing is, moving forward, you will see, as you've already seen, and man, oh man, does a year like this year in such an odd way, such a weird and I guess negative way in a lot of circumstances, but kind of help Joe Biden because he just doesn't have to publicly speak as much. He doesn't have to be in the public eye as often as any other election ever would have asked a presidential candidate to be, because of the excuse of being as safe as possible. It means debates can be as limited as they can, and just his speaking engagements, his amount of interacting with reporters, all of that, all the things that are utterly his weaknesses will wind up being less and less demonstrated to the American people, because he can lean on the world in which we currently live, and also apparently lean on his vice presidential candidate to do a lot of the speaking when he doesn't want to anymore. All right, let's shift gears. I like this story a lot because I wonder, truthfully, I mean, I'm sure that to a lot of people this sounds like a cool thing. And I want to say, as I throw this story out there from a Texas insurance firm, that I don't dislike pets. I love dogs. I don't have any pets right now, but I love dogs quite a bit. But a company is offering pawternity leave. That is pawternity leave and a $300 credit to the adoption fees for employees that adopt a pet each year. $300 credit. That's probably cool. They're broadcasting this out there. And pawternity leave, by the way, I think it's unlimited. I think you can take as much as you want. And they're encouraging those who get a pet to stay home, to get acquainted with their pet, quote. And my only question about this, could you actually take this? There's a lot of companies out there. I think there's a lot of tech firms that'll offer you unlimited vacation time. But we all know that most places of work, you wouldn't walk in and be like, I'm going to take the next 3.5 weeks off and expect to still have a job and expect to not be judged for that. And I'm not sure if this doesn't also fall in that same boat, because this company, Zebra is the name of the company, a nation's leading insurance company, according to its site, feels as though this is a good thing to offer its employees. You walk up to your boss, you say, hey, taking the next 2 weeks off, we adopted a puppy. We could use the $300 deposit, and I'm going to take some paternity leave. I don't know how people react. I don't know how the other employees who might pick up the work you're doing at your job react. I'm confused to think about how you do it. And if one person does it, then do more people do it? And every so often you hear these things like these celebrated weird kind of additional fringe employee benefits. But at a time when a lot of people are struggling in a lot of places, to have somebody sitting at home for an amount of time getting to know their puppy does not feel to me like the right timing for that sort of thing. And even just calling it what you call it, paternity leave, I don't know. I feel like maybe this is all a big gag and not necessarily real, but the CEO is very proud of it. He says, I know this kind of companionship can make a huge difference in the quality of life. Absolutely true, sir. That is Zebra CEO Keith Milnick. So he said that for that reason, he's supporting the company and helping people start a family in any way that they can. Okay, maybe because we've all been stuck in quarantine and under lockdown, we're adding a lot of emotional elements to this story in a way that maybe it might be a tad less than what we're saying here. But just I ask you this, and you can feel free to tell us on our social media pages, if you or someone you work with was to take significant time off in order to bond with not a child, but a new pet in the family, would you feel a little bit nonplussed about that if you were someone who was asked to pick up some of that work? I'm just asking. I'm just throwing the question out there. Don't shoot the messenger. I just want to know what your answer to that is. It is the Chad Benson Show. This is Craig Collins filling in.
Being antisocial sucks. Hang with Chad's friends on Facebook, The Chad Benson Show. And if you just need some alone time, head on over to Twitter at Chad Benson Show. Either way, we can't wait to meet the real you.
This is The Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. Guess what? I know you're going to be surprised. More books coming out, more people writing. I think Woodward is writing a second book called Rage. Which, by the way, now I don't even know. We've had 2 books from Woodward so far, both one-word titles. I imagine this is going to be a series. Maybe George R. Martin asking he'll just write like 7 or 8 of them. And I hope we start adding in like mythical creatures and stuff, because that's what it sounds like those books at times are. And certainly the Michael Cohen book that is also being touted in some places, Disloyal, a memoir. Is this a thing? Do you have to make it a one-word title? Is that the rule? When you write a book about the president, you got to make it something, anything that can be digested very simply. As what if I just write a book, Evil President Trump? I don't even think I can add the subtitle there because that won't be good. And I have no connection, never met the guy, but I can write a full book, a full evil book leaning into that side of things. And I imagine it'll be a bestseller. I'll make a bunch of money. It'll be great, which is, I think, exactly what Michael Cohen is intent on doing with his book called Disloyal, a true story of the former personal attorney to President Donald J. Trump. This is just in a lot of ways confusing, too, because I think this was part of any sort of agreement he had for a while on how he got out of jail early. Actually, it was mostly COVID-19 related because he is still supposed to be under house arrest, even though he eats at restaurants sometimes in New York. But Michael Cohen, the former attorney to the president, has a book that will be coming out. I think that eventually they did throw out any sort of agreement there as not making sense. And there's some things teased already, though, in this book, including, of course, the stuff that potentially could have maybe sort of happened in Russia. And now apparently Cohen witnessed it. And I'm not going to get into any more details on what that is. But come on. I mean, this is tabloid. This isn't even really. Can we sue? I assume there's got to be lawsuits that'll come from this book. I imagine we'll see several of them. There's mentions of places in Las Vegas that maybe he had gone to with the now president of the United States. There's insinuations that Trump, at one point, President Trump might have wanted to kill Cohen because of all the things that he possesses, all the scandalous knowledge. And to be honest, if you remember, there was a point in time where Michael Cohen had leaked the idea that he had a whole bunch of audio recordings. And I think just like one semi thing came out, but a whole bunch of audio recordings that he was going to debut. And then we saw almost nothing there. There was almost no information. That was a nothing burger. And now it's just the possession of the information itself, which will all be made public in the book Disloyal. I want to see a video series of this. I think there should be some movies that come out where just one after the other, we get all the different Fear, Rage, Disloyal made for TV movies. Although I don't think Lifetime produces those. I don't know who does it. Somebody's got to put those out, and I imagine we'll be seeing them soon. All right, I also saw that AMC theaters are reopening in a lot of places. This is actually going to be on the 20th, so in a little bit here, they will be reopening, and they're going to charge just 15 cents a ticket to get people in the door. This is the equivalent of what they charged when they first went into business back in the 1920s, so they're very excited about the idea. I assume still the popcorn, the candy, everything else will be $75 a pop. I imagine that will not be 1920 prices. But just the fact that they're going to try, I think, to en masse open all of their businesses. And certainly that's one of many industries that's been hit very, very hard by the world in which we live right now. And then add such a small amount of money. I wonder if the idea behind this is more so than just to be viral, but to get people to try to go back into a theater and maybe convince a lot of people that it is a safe thing to do. It is a valuable thing to do and something that they might be able to tell their friends that, I went and I'm fine, because the hope is, I think, that a lot of people would be okay if they do this, if they start going back into these theaters. But the AMC organization, the AMC company, owns over 100 theaters. That's roughly a sixth of all of the theater locations within the country. And honestly, I can't think of something that I would hate to see go away, something fun, something we all do, more than a movie theater. I want movie theaters to exist forever. I don't want to get into a world where everything is just debuted on your television. Everything is on demand for you, because that's not necessarily the way in which some things are made to be witnessed. So I hope that this works. I hope that a lot of people go out and grab the tickets and then maybe still smuggle in. Although, let's be honest, a lot of us may hit the dollar store for a couple candy items and put them in some of our pockets before going into an AMC theater or anywhere else. And is that okay? No. Is that against the rules? Yes. Do a lot of people do it? Probably. Maybe we all shouldn't this time. Maybe if the ticket's only 15 cents, everybody should hit the concession stand. Everybody should get at least one item and really just go crazy, honestly, if you can, because that's the only way they're going to make any money opening day. And they definitely need the money. And honestly, maybe we also need to coordinate so that the Michael Cohen book becomes a movie. Right on. These are fake. These books are, I just can't imagine how these meetings even go with people when you're writing this. You're like, you know what? This wasn't crazy enough. And this is a book about the president, and the people who are going to buy this in mass really need it to be crazier. Can you push it up a notch? Can you claim you saw something that no one ever needs to prove you saw? Sure. I'll throw another thing in there. I'm a guy that doesn't seem to care about anything in Michael Cohen. So why not? Let's go. Let's take it one step deeper. No one's going to notice anyway, because it's a bestseller now already, probably. I imagine even without anything actually in it, it doesn't matter. People are buying that in mass. But this is just the world in which we live. And maybe I'll go see the movie. One last thing. This is sort of just a TV thing. Chris Harrison is the host of The Bachelorette. Yes, I'm diving into this for a quick second. He will be taking a temporary leave, though, because I guess while taping, he wound up dropping his kid off at something, and he had to quarantine for 2 weeks. So someone else is going to be hosting the Bachelorette show that's coming up, someone who I guess was a former contestant. And what is happening in the world in which that show feels the least like the 2020 world in which the rest of us are living? If you remember, if you've ever seen an episode of The Bachelor and or The Bachelorette, there is not a lot of social distancing taking place. Now the host had to quarantine himself, and they just keep barreling through making more of this show because this is exactly what we need at this time. And I think he actually just had to quarantine, like I said, not because anybody got sick, but because he wound up dropping a kid off at college. And so they're like, you know what? No, we can't. 2 weeks. You got to be out just in case. Who knows? And we'll bring in a former contestant. I might watch the season of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette because it's going to be surreal to see that kind of show in this kind of time. And then all of a sudden have the host disappear for a couple weeks and then maybe just pop back up. I don't know. But that's the way in which the television world, I guess, is going to operate in this year. And we've seen it all actually in other places too now. We're seeing other hosts drop out. I think Simon Cowell had a back injury, and he's now not on America's Got Talent anymore. So it's just, I don't know. 2020 keeps being 2020 is the best I have to say. This is Craig Collins in for the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad will be back on Monday. Let's spend a second talking about education, shall we? Let's spend a second discussing e-learning versus in-person learning, especially when it comes to kids. A lot of different challenges have been addressed in the recent weeks. These all coming from experts saying things like it is harder. Some of these might be obvious to the rest of us who don't need to be an expert. You just need to encounter a child of any kind. It's harder to engage children, to keep their attention if they're at home, if they're in an environment they're more comfortable in than used to learning in. So the first step in having e-learning be effective forms of teaching for young kids, or most students actually, is to create an environment that feels different than home, which in and of itself can be a challenge. Then the teacher has to do a great job of multitasking, apparently, to not only provide the instruction of a lesson, but also continue to engage all the students, specifically in chat. A lot of things that you see online, if you've ever done a video conference with anybody, you know that there's a little screen you can type into. And so kids may be encouraged to interact with their teacher via the typed chat so that they can feel engaged, feel connected, as they're not going to be voicing and adding questions during a lecture all that often. So the teacher not only has to provide the lesson, but then has to be capable of multitasking on a daily, minute-by-minute basis in order to answer all those questions and have the student feel heard, because nothing apparently impacts a child's interest in something more than also feeling like they're not really being listened to, they're being ignored. If they do ask a question, it's not answered, there's a high likelihood that they tune out. All of this then connects to another story for me. This actually comes from Google. Google is introducing a new product to us. It's called Google Lenses. It's an app that allows you to point your camera at a difficult math problem, and it'll just solve it for you. You don't even have to put in the things. It is that lazy that you don't even have to type into a calculator anymore the question. You don't even have to understand the symbols inside of a mathematical problem. You just hold up good old Google's device to it, and boom, answer, done. I guess the good news here is education is not needed. Just let it do everything. Eventually, we'll get to a point where you can point your camera at the kitchen, and a meal will be created somehow for you and a bunch of Jeff Bezos bots of some kind. And then, hey, life is easy. Maybe you can hold up your phone with a Google app pointed at your workstation, and your job can be done for the day in a few minutes. And don't worry, the company will still pay you for that. Everything will be okay. This whole argument as to whether or not education is more valuable in person, I've actually seen some people with the take that online learning is better than in-person learning, and that might be true in some pieces of data for college-level people who are dedicated to what they're learning already, but it's certainly in no way, shape, or form ever been true for children, for kids not going back to school. And so there's a lot of stories right now out there as to how effective, how valuable it is, and then how detrimental it may be if studies aren't provided, if kids don't learn for another semester. This would be a second semester after our last one got canceled or changed to e-learning for a lot of people. And a lot of kids, a lot of people, even in like high school level, there's some college level courses reporting that the education wasn't valuable. I mean, college students are fighting for their money back from universities because they feel like they're not getting what they paid for, what they're going into debt for, a lot of them. And that is an interesting conversation as it reflects on just how valuable this type of learning is, especially with parents who might not even be working from home anymore, as some economies are open and some people do have to go to jobs in order to make a living to provide, I don't know, say food for those children. There's also a really scary story that I saw recently about the potential for children and adolescents to be depressed because of the lack of social interaction that's taken away by not having an atmosphere like school to go to. And there actually is a projection that 1/4 of young adults may have contemplated suicide. These are kids between the ages of teens to 18 to 24-year-olds because of the social isolation that exists during the time of the pandemic. So also, and this is just to throw it out there, not to necessarily scare anybody, there is actual medical detrimental effects to things like not allowing kids, not allowing people to interact socially at a time when that is as important as anything else. Your mental health is a thing. It's something that at times is talked about quite a bit. And so it's really scary to me to see some data on the lack of value of education, the challenges that are going to be asked for in the world of education for people to actually truly learn things, and then the potential for emotional or maybe mental impact in a very negative way. 30% of respondents to a recent survey said they suffered symptoms of anxiety or depression. 26% reported trauma or stress-related disorders because of the pandemic, because of this. And by the way, households that were hit hardest by this were minority households. Hispanic and Black respondents similarly offered very well above average information and numbers to a lot of the detrimental effects mentally of the world we all just went through, and the world that some are saying needs to come back. And certainly in the role of schools, a lot of places are saying it just can't be done. You cannot teach in person. It's the same argument, right? We're going to keep having the same argument. We can change it a little. We can adjust the idea, the topic, but it's the same thing. It's what is more valuable. Is it more valuable right now to provide help to our economy, to give people a way of life, a living, a financial ability to provide for their family, or is it more valuable to protect them from a virus that is killing Americans, that lives are being lost to, and we don't truly fully understand, and we don't have a treatment for right now. The same is true when you look at education. The same is true when you look at college football. Anything we discuss right now, it's going to be a pro-con as to what is more valuable and less valuable. And the people who say out loud to that, and I have this conversation a little more often than maybe some, that, we take risks every day. We do things like drive a car, and that's inherently dangerous. We do a lot of things in our lives that we accept a amount of risk because the outcome, the reward is valuable enough to put the risk out there. When you say that, those who are very much of the opinion that everything should be shut down will attack you. They'll attack you for even mentioning the concept, even trying to insinuate that this conversation is difficult and it's multifaceted and we need to go through all the steps to get to an outcome. And they'll tell you that you're just willing to risk lives and lose lives because of that. But everyone that does that, everyone reacts in that simplistic, one-sided fashion, just doesn't think of all the variables or just dismisses them. Because that is truthfully the other thing in this, is there's sometimes a fight to even validate the fact that these are real things. Even if the CDC provides information like this, which, by the way, that's where all that information came from. The CDC studied 5,412 different survey respondents over a period in June and asked about the impacts mentally of the epidemic and of the quarantine that existed. And the CDC provided that information. But now, if in a conversation with someone you try to provide it to them, the odds of it being responded to well are probably zero, because it's just the world in which we live. And I keep saying that phrase, and I'm told sometimes I say that phrase too much, but it's the truest thing you can possibly say right now. It's just we're in such a unique time, and everyone has such a hot take. And I always blame social media for those hot takes because I think social media begged us for them. The only way to succeed on that platform was to have the most attention-grabbing and the most simplistic idea, because social media is not really good at sharing complex ideas or sharing bland takes. Joe Biden does terrible on social media. Donald Trump does well because, well, Joe Biden is not an exciting guy with a hot take very often, and Donald Trump certainly is. And that's just what it begged all of us for. So now every single one of us, any conversation, if you have a conversation about education, if you say going back to school has value, someone will slap you in the face via a bunch of words of insinuating that you just don't care about life because you're saying a complicated fact to them. You're saying something that has multiple pieces to it, and that's just not something any of us can hear in today's world, and I'm not sure why. But the Google Lens thing, I mean, I hope we don't roll these. We've got to stop. And I'm kidding as I say that, but I'm also kind of serious. Because, like, if you get to the point where everything, and honestly, we already rely on it. You can already ask your smart speaker to tell you how math works or to do the math for you. But if we keep relying more and more on this stuff, and if we keep rolling these things out to kids, like I just have to take a picture of my math test and the answers pop up on my screen. And if I can do that at home, by the way, in a world where, the teacher can't actually see me entirely, they can probably see me on the screen punching in the numbers, but they can't see everything. It's going to be tremendously easy to devalue education even further because of the amount of technology that already existed. Google Lens isn't alone. It was already out there, but it's out there even more now. It's getting easier and easier all the time. Here's one other thing I thought was interesting, totally shifting gears. And just because I wonder if you've ever had this happen to you before, apparently our brains are programmed to see faces in objects that are not people. Where it's a new study. This came out of Psychological Sciences, the magazine, which I love the swimsuit issue of that one. But a leading researcher by the name of Dr. Colin Palmer said that we are programmed. If you've ever had a cup of coffee and the little foam turned into a face to you, or if you've seen a face in a tree or something, that's just our brain. Our brain desperately desires to see people in anyday objects. And apparently it's just something that we're all used to. And it's, I guess, something that our eyes play a trick on us because you're trying to identify whatever it is you're looking at, and we identify with ourselves pretty easily. We interpret everything through the lens of us, and so it's easier to see a tree as a person than as a tree. And now I feel like every time a viral story goes out there of this person, famous person, whoever, religious figure seen in object, I will now have that ruined for me by this study. I'm now going to dismiss it originally by, we all see it. And once they tell you what's in it, by the way, it's so much easier to see whatever it is that someone's claiming they have in their cup of coffee than before they tell you. But I like the fact that this study is out there and kind of proves that any time that you have sworn, that like the face of this person is in this item over here, that, yeah, your brain is telling you that. So you're not crazy. Don't worry. Everything's okay. This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in.
Boys, give me a bowl of chili with plenty of peppers.
One Mexican heartburn. Why don't you mugs grow up?
The Chad Benson Show, where independent, a la carte thinkers have a seat at the table and a voice in the dialogue.
I'll have what she's having.
This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, actually filling in for the day. Happy to have you with me. I wanted to talk for just a second about how a lot of the people you watch on television, a lot of people that voice their opinions on a daily basis might misunderstand the popularity in one of the executive orders taken by the president to try to cut down on payroll taxes, meaning that workers pay less, meaning that you might be able to not have to be sent a stimulus check in order to have more money this year. And I know a lot of the critics would also say, well, that's not actually gone. It's just essentially getting delayed or deferred. It would be owed later. There have been some leaked ideas about ways in which those taxes could be forgiven for everyday Americans so that they could make more money. But here is a way that I will demonstrate the popularity of taxes going away, at least in some form or fashion, for an amount of time. Not all of them, but the payroll taxes for sure. Here is a list of people. They all answered a survey on the things that they would give up forever in order to never pay taxes again. These are things that average Americans would be totally fine giving up forever if that also meant that taxes for them are no longer a thing to ever worry about. 8% of people would give up all forms of music, which to me that's just wrong. All forms of music, never hear music again. That would change the way in which you walk every day. You got to have a theme song to life, my friend. 6% would give up a cell phone forever. And it's something actually here, though, that those are the lower end numbers. 12% would give up all of TV. They didn't say whether or not that meant streaming things, anything, a YouTube video, but 12% they'd give up TV. 19% never pay taxes again, would give up their favorite food. 22% would give up all dessert to never have to pay again. This is going to be a very popular thing if it actually does get off the floor finally and does get instituted. 22%, and I love this one because this is probably self-serving, would give up all exercise in order to, there's some people that'd be easier for than others. I like this. 1 in 5 people, about 20%, would give up their best friend. That is a level that you can't find. Or excuse me, I got that wrong. 1 in 20. Thank God. I got that totally wrong. Not 20%. 1 in 20 people would give up their best friend. That's a low number, but still, it is a number of people. 5% that would be entirely okay. They're like, all right, I love this person. They're my best friend ever, but no more taxes. I'm never talking to that person again. Popular concept, more popular for the American people than it'll ever be for the politicians that debate it all the time. Alcohol, 37% of people give it up forever, never pay taxes. Number 2 on this list, video games, 40%. And again, easier for some than others to give up these sort of things. And the number 1, the highest percentage of people willing to give something up, and I'm not sure if this is just because, as I've mentioned now a couple times, maybe some people don't do a lot of this, or maybe they do. Watching sports, 43% of people would never watch another sport again in order to never pay another tax again. That is not good news if you're a sports league right now, I guess. But this just it demonstrates to me how very, very popular a portion of these executive actions that were taken by the president are. And I also can't fathom the way in which this would be covered or try to project the way in which this would be covered if President Obama or if anyone that the media liked had done this in a time of politicians not being able to agree, which guess what? That's all the time. We've always lived in that world. The president stepping forward and trying to enact whatever they can within their powers to help the American people at a time when politicians are slowing down a process that they should not be slowing down in order to bicker back and forth, in order to try to come up with a solution. The fact that he took action at all, and this isn't something on every station every single day being praised and states aren't demanding for ways in which to enact all of these different orders, is sort of shocking to me. Because again, if the opposite had happened just a few years ago, and if it's someone like Obama, who was loved by the media, I don't need to tell you that, had done the same thing every day, would be the leadership shown by the president to step aside as far as all the political arguing goes and try to get something done. This is incredible leadership, and we need to elect him again right away. That's the way in which it would be talked about if it were anyone other than Trump. The fact that it's Trump, the fact that it's $400, some of which the state has to pay for unemployment benefits. It's as comprehensive as it can possibly be. To say that the tax thing doesn't help people who aren't working, well, there's the unemployment payment. There's every side of this, and even putting funds that he has control of to start funding into that idea makes it possible in a way that maybe a lot of presidents couldn't get it done, couldn't figure out how to allocate funds, because usually that's a roadblock with Congress. But all of that happens, and yet the coverage on this is it's a gimmick. It's not real. There's no intention of it ever passing, of it ever being utilized, and politicians still can't come to an agreement. They're on a recess now. They get to go home for a holiday, for a summer vacation after getting absolutely nothing done, and the president gets no credit, man. Chad Benson Show, Craig Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in with you today. Happy to be here. Chad is back on Monday. There are a couple things that happened during the presidential briefing the other day that are just going to be talked about and talked about and talked about. And one of them I've addressed on the show, and I can address again here in just a second. But that's the one that I think has more value, because a reporter was blatantly trying to make Trump fight with him, for lack of any other better explanation, and asking him if his lying is something that he regrets doing. And the president does the presidential thing, does the right thing. He ignores the question. He moves on. Before that moment, another moment happened that you've heard about quite a bit in the news. This is a reporter asking a question about an article that appeared on the internet somewhere, written by an attorney. And I'll let them give you the context here, because I don't even want to provide the context to it. But here, just real quick, the way that this goes, the right response as a president who has, as he demonstrates during the interaction, not a good understanding of what the topic is that's being discussed. He does not fully grasp the issue that's brought up in the article that's being referenced, and then whether or not it has any validity, because he gets it wrong when he repeats it back to the reporter. You should have just avoided this question too, Mr. President. You should have skipped this one entirely, like you do the other guy asking you if you regret lying. But here we go.
Domestic politics, there are claims.
Can't understand a word you said.
And by the way, at first she does sound like a teacher on Charlie Brown. I have no idea what any of that was. She's wearing a mask as she asked the question, so she's going to try a little bit harder to enunciate.
Circulating in social media that Kamala Harris is not eligible to run for vice president because she was an anchor baby, I quote. Do you or can you definitively say whether or not Kamala Harris is eligible, meets the legal requirements to run as vice president? What
Trump should have done. Here is me handling this question the way that he should have handled it. I'm going to need more information. I don't really know, all the details of that right now. So my team will get back to you on a response to that question. We're still figuring out the details of that. And that may still add more validity to what seems to be an invalid argument for sure than you want to add. But at least you demonstrate, because in the moment, the president was not fully briefed on that exact topic and what the exact accusation is, as he demonstrates in a second. And yet, and I think this is the television world that he comes from, the desire to answer a question as opposed to be a politician about it, which a lot of his supporters are very happy he is not, but to be a politician about it and just avoid until you know what exactly you're being asked and what the best possible response is to it. But here's what he says.
So I just heard that. I heard it today that she doesn't meet the requirements. And by the way, the lawyer that wrote that piece is a very highly qualified, very talented lawyer. I have no idea if that's right. I would have assumed the Democrats would have checked that out before she gets chosen to run for vice president. But that's a very serious. You're saying that they're saying that she doesn't qualify because she wasn't born in this country.
No, that's not what they're saying. And that's where you demonstrate that you don't fully understand. You haven't been fully briefed yet, Mr. President, on the question. So you want to move away from the conversation at this moment, because that's what that question is looking for. Any sort of validation. Of course, President Trump, famous for at other times questioning the legitimacy of President Barack Obama or anyone else and whether or not they were born in the country. And this is not a road that you wanted to go down at all, in my opinion. There's so many ways that you can discuss your opponents right now, those being Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that have nothing to do with this and don't need to have anything to do with this. And until you're better briefed on it, and if it does have any level of credibility that ever winds up being put out there in the world, maybe then addressing it in a different way. But right now, it's as much a trap question as this very next question that, by the way, both of these questions are being praised in the media. And this one, the one about the lying, just to me, it continues to boggle my mind that the person who asked this had any good intention whatsoever in asking this question, because it's so ridiculously loaded. Press didn't behave like this with other presidents. You didn't just demonstrate your dislike of a human to the guy. You tried to have some level of pretend journalistic integrity, and yet this next one has none of that.
President, after 3.5 years, do you regret it all the lying you've done to the American people?
All the what?
All the lying, all the dishonesties.
That who has done?
You have done. Tens of thousands.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
By the way, he calls on someone else after being asked the most ridiculous question we've heard in a while at a press conference. And I want to play the end because I really like how the next reporter kind of responds to the situation. He has no idea what's going on, and he has a very different question.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the payroll tax.
I wanted to ask about payroll taxes if I could just go a different road. So in both of those situations, one in which President Trump may be more used to being asked commonly by a lot of reporters if he's a terrible person, a liar, whatever, capable of moving around that one. The other one, though, being the one about Kamala Harris and her ability to run as a vice presidential candidate just should have been addressed later. Should have been addressed later when you know better. And I do think that it's being a little bit unfairly reported, because if you hear in that audio, and I can play it again to kind of make this point, he does say he doesn't know. He does say that he assumes that the Democrats would have made sure that Kamala is a able to run candidate for vice president before nominating her, before adding her to the ticket, which is all tremendously accurate information. That's the way that any human being, if asked this question, not a person in a political position, not a person anywhere, but just one person to another, would answer and talk about this. They'd be like, well, that doesn't really make sense, because they would probably be able to research and make sure that the person is valid for the position they're putting them in. That doesn't really ring true. But then he adds that little sentence of potential credibility that the media runs wild with. But here, just listen to it again. And anyone out there, if you like this guy or if you hate this guy, just for a second, listen the way a human listens to someone else speaking without adding any potential hatred or bias, which is what he's getting accused of, oddly enough. But without adding any of that, just try to hear the words and really judge if you think he's saying that he believes the story or not. He says that the lawyer who wrote it is a very credible person. That is not necessarily saying that you still agree with the legal assessment. But hear it one more time. If I can get it to play one more time. See, my computer doesn't even want to do this.
In social media that Kamala Harris is not eligible to run for vice president because she was an anchor baby, I quote. Do you or can you definitively say whether or not Kamala Harris is eligible, meets the legal requirements to run as vice president?
So I just heard that. I heard it today that she doesn't meet the requirements. And by the way, the lawyer that wrote that piece is a very highly qualified, very talented lawyer. I have no idea if that's right. I would have assumed the Democrats would have checked that out before she gets chosen to run for vice president.
If I stop it there and don't let him add the other sentence, this is because she wasn't born there, which is just a demonstration of not knowing the story more than an accusation. The media can call it an accusation, but that's not what that's not how he's speaking. That's not what he's doing. But if I stop it just before that, and I don't want to get accused of being, biased, so maybe I'll still play that bit. The way that whole answer goes is the way a regular person would answer something they don't know anything about. Like, yeah, that's out there in the news. I heard that the lawyer who wrote it's respectable to a lot of people. I don't really know. And I would assume that the team, that's a valuable team, a very well-built team as far as the Democratic Party in general, probably understanding if they can or can't run somebody for an office. They probably would have vetted that aspect of each candidate before having anyone get nominated for the position. Those are all things that he said that I think anyone would have wanted him to say, that wanted him to discredit the idea of this. But then he says this.
But that's a very serious. You're saying that they're saying that she doesn't qualify because she wasn't born in this country.
That is a question, by the way. It doesn't really necessarily sound like a question, but it kind of is a question. And at least that's my take. But again, I'm not filled with Trump derangement syndrome. So maybe that's the reason I hear it my way, or maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? But that is one of the other biggest stories in the news over the last day. And that's literally why at times I think the president has to walk away from press conferences, because that's the goal every day of every human in that room. Most of them just trap the guy in something, get him to say something he can't say, get him to say something that we can change. And then we got him. We win for a day. And then we'll all come back and do it tomorrow as a group, except the one dude who just really wants to know more about other things.
Payroll tax.
He just wants to know about payroll tax, man. All right, this is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in.
Warning, no snowflake zone. Uninformed opinions are in danger of melting. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. First, a quick message. Robert Trump, President Donald Trump's brother, is seriously ill again in the hospital. He actually went through a hospital stay back in June or July. Can't remember which one it was, fighting, for his life. And he may be in that situation again. So all of our thoughts go out to that. I know thoughts and prayers is something you get ridiculed for all the time. I am a Catholic, so I think that sometimes, some of us actually do pray. Prayers for Robert Trump, the younger brother of President Donald Trump, who the president has visited, just hoping for the best in that world. All right, let's move on to some other things that are still going on. I want to talk about civil unrest again real quick, just because can't ever get over it right now. You can't get past the world in which we currently live. And then the difference between any sort of ideal and then organizations. And that's as easy as it is to explain. An ideal, a concept, a thought is separated from those who create organizations around that thought and then provide messaging way beyond the simplicity of a thought. And if you're now confused, what the hell are you talking about, Collins? What are you trying to say? Black Lives Matter as a statement, as a phrase, as a concept, as a thought is not in and of itself bad. It's not in and of itself excluding that all lives matter or anything else like that. It is simply stating, in my opinion, as a thought, not at all as an organization or the people who run it, that at times there have been examples, certainly George Floyd, one of them, where lives are being devalued and maybe not necessarily treatment is fair for people in certain communities. And this most specifically, I guess, would be black men and their dealings with law enforcement officials. That's a true statement. So as a concept, as an ideal, as a thought, I don't really have much of a problem with someone supporting the idea that Black Lives Matter, and that's something that they want to put out into the world. However, the organization that's been created around that concept says a whole lot of things that are way beyond the ideal itself, way beyond that simple one sentence that I tried very hard to get as correct as I could. Case in point would be out of Chicago, where looting and rioting took place again. This was all in response to the police officers interacting with a individual who was armed and even fired at them. They wound up firing back at the individual, I think shooting the guy in the arm, and he wound up being brought to the hospital. But that story got into certain communities in Chicago, and they chose that evening, this was over the weekend, to riot, to loot, to bring full U-Hauls into the equation. This was a coordinated attempt to take as much as they could from the businesses in downtown Chicago. And then during the week, not only has the Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx, who's been in the news way too often, probably for her sake, been accused of not trying hard enough to go after, arrest, and prosecute several individuals involved in this or things like this. But beyond Kim Foxx, there's also been comments by the Black Lives Matter movement out of Chicago, the individuals who run that organization, saying that this is okay, saying that the rioting and looting is akin to reparations that are deserved by the people who are doing this. And so this is something that they'll continue to do, even though the mayor in Chicago has said that they will absolutely go after anyone and everyone that had done this, and that there is no excuse, in her opinion, Lori Lightfoot's opinion, for this kind of crime. This is not validated by any reasoning you add to it. The organization that's organizing these things says there is ways in which you can validate the rioting and looting, the crimes that take place, the destroying of certain businesses in downtown Chicago who will not be able to recover from a second, a third version of this. It's surreal, the conversation. And then you transition somewhere else, like in Seattle, where a group of Black Lives Matter individuals take a megaphone to a neighborhood and start yelling at a predominantly now white neighborhood that used to be a neighborhood that had a lot of minorities in it, by saying this was gentrified, that this was taken from them, and it deserves to be given back to the people who are protesting this way and yelling things into a megaphone, and that even money should be given. And then one individual is interviewed while the news is out there reporting on this, saying that that's not even enough. We need to get back everything we lost, he says, and then even more. We deserve even more. And that, to me, is not necessarily the peaceful protesting that so many have highlighted within the world of news, within the world of media, and said how great it is. But turning a blind eye to any and all of the negative things that are happening, rioting, looting, or demanding of people to give up their homes to other people, to at all validate that idea is a huge problem that's continuing to play itself out in so many places, in Chicago, in Seattle, in Portland, because the conversation that even everyday Americans are having on places like social media or just in person, there are so many people that now try to validate and say, well, you know, anger is justified here and this is justified here. So because of all those justifications, then, you know, property doesn't matter as much as lives. This shouldn't matter. All of those reinforcements that this is okay is what's creating this world that none of us really want to live in, and this world in which the mayor of Chicago has to broadcast live on television that she will actually go after criminals. That shouldn't be a hot take. That shouldn't be a shocking announcement. And yet a lot of people covered it like, wow, look at the strong take that the mayor in Chicago is now finally adding to the news media. You're just going to try to prosecute people that are committing crimes. I can't handle so many things today. You know what? Honestly, real quick, a side note, I've been tired today. I thank you for hanging out and being with me. I live very close to the Chicago area, and last night I heard a lot of rustling outside my window, a lot of rustling. And as I turned on lights, it didn't stop. I kind of got a little concerned that maybe someone was outside, maybe with demands happening for places like the places in Seattle, maybe someone was upset and out my window. I woke up, I woke the wife up, I turned on all the lights, I was going crazy. And it was a possum. It was a scary possum, mind you. This one looked me dead in the eyes. It looked soulless when it stared back at me when I finally made eye contact with it. Like, nah, I'm here, man, and I don't care about you. But it did. It got me riled. And so because of that, I think I've been a little bit off my game today. But thank you, as always, for listening, for joining, for being a part of the show. Chad Benson is back on Monday. I am thrilled to be here, as always, with you guys. And I blame that possum. But I don't know why I feel like I have to validate the fact that it's an intimidating one. It didn't scurry. I turned all the lights on. I paid full attention to it. And it seemed to think that I was the problem. It seemed that possum did seem to think that I should leave my house and I should give it to him because he was not concerned at all. I feel like I could take one. If it were a group of possums, I probably couldn't. But I don't know. At the same time, he might have been more determined in the fight than me. But that's probably the biggest reason why today I've been chugging Mountain Dew during these breaks while filling in on the Chad Benson Show. As I said, my name is Craig Collins. You can find me on social media at the Craig Collins Show. If you want to tell me any of the takes I have are terrible, I always welcome that. I enjoy that all the time on my social media pages. I look forward to being with you guys again in the near future, as I always have. Stay safe out there in all the areas you're in. And honestly, holding people accountable is not wrong. That's not something that has to be thought of as wrong at all. And yet so many people seem to think it is. So you know, do the best you can out there in the world and hold people accountable for the things they do that are wrong. Because, you know, even if the people in Chicago or the people other places don't want to do that as much as apparently they should, it is the way in which we should all live our lives. One more time, also, thoughts to Robert Trump. Robert Trump, the younger brother of Donald Trump, struggling in the hospital. Craig Collins, Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show.